Well, some would say the pandemic has brought forth another crisis, the one happening in our schools. We've talked about this before. Half of Idaho's teachers have considered quitting this past year, according to a poll from the state. And we've spoken to a handful who have quit because of the workload, the low pay, and the lack of respect. That sentiment has also extended to local school boards. And we've seen the videos, parents screaming at board members in public meetings, even here in Idaho. In fact, last fall, the Coeur d'Alene School District, seen here, the Board of Trustees meeting had to cancel a special meeting when they were going to discuss mask mandates after an angry mob swarmed the building and tried to get in. They were worried for their safety. At a school board meeting this morning, Reuters put out a story where they found more than 220 threatening and harassing messages sent to school board members across 15 states. A lot of them serious enough to report to police. Many of those members resigned or didn't seek re-election for fear of their safety or their family's safety. And yes, that has also happened here in Idaho. Oh yeah, we love our educators, right? But you'd be hard-pressed to prove that with the way some of them have been treated over the last year and a half. Here is a short list of notable resignations from high-profile education roles in our community. You can see the list there, kind of small, but let's just name out a few of them, like the West Ada Board Chair, Ed Klopfenstein, to name a few. Middleton Superintendent is also on that list. We've got a West Ada Vice Chair, a couple other West Ada members. 3 of those resignations, by the way, came within the last month. 4 of them from the West Ada School District alone. And there's one more we can add to that list. Amy Johnson, trustee from the West Ada School Board. Johnson, one of 3 trustees who have been on the board since the beginning of the pandemic, resigned last night during their meeting. Her reasons line up with what we've already described: harassment and threats over her input on COVID policies. Joe Paris sat down with Johnson, who shares her thoughts on serving during a volatile time and why she's stepping down.
I thought as the November elections played out and then as we took over as a new board, some of those things would stop and it would go away. But what happened was, even in January and February, those things didn't really stop. People just couldn't stop attacking or harassing, and it got worse and it got more private.
After months and months of threats and harassment, West Ada School Board member Amy Johnson finally decided it was time to walk away. She says, though, she walks away knowing she and the board accomplished a lot despite the pandemic.
I really felt like I had gotten a lot of the things that I had set out to run done, and now there was this huge risk and harassment of my employer and threats against my children, and it just seemed like it was a good time to step away.
If you're comfortable, I'd like to get into a little bit of detail. Like, these are not benign general threats, we're going to get you. Do you ever feel you're in danger because you were trying to just serve on a school board?
Yeah, we had board meetings where we actually had, after Commissioner Laciando had people show up at her house, we had some school board meetings where we had Meridian PD actually drive by all of our houses and make sure there wasn't any protesters. I had a threat made against my children around hoping that they killed themselves, and so I had to sit my kids down, and we actually worked, my family helped, we dropped them off at school and picked them up. They used to walk home from school. Trying not to make them fearful because I don't want them to grow up in fear, but also wanted to just make sure they were protected, right? I didn't know what was going to happen. This was an anonymous person. They could do anything. It's pretty easy to get information in Idaho. So, and then from my employer standpoint, I mean, I have posts from people on Facebook saying, let's see how far we can push Amy to her breaking point. Let's protest at Blue Cross. Let's bring them in. They won't like the negative publicity. They'll force her to resign. That was their strategy. And I've never in my life, in 20 years in Idaho, seen somebody's strategy be to attack a public officer's employer and go after them and bring their name through the mud just because somebody serves on a school board. I mean, it's just crazy.
Johnson says she totally understands the stress and anxiety the first year and a half the pandemic brought to school parents. She understands, Johnson says, she's a parent too. But she explains, more recently, something changed.
The last 6 months have been just about hate and discontent and attacking and slandering and harassment with no factual basis whatsoever, none. There is nothing. And I'll kind of be candid here, even the news media didn't go actually validate some of this information. I mean, and still printed it. And that's not helping the situation either. So You know, we all have to play our part. I think the silent majority has to step up. This kind of behavior is not Idaho. It doesn't represent Idaho values. It's not freedom. This is not creating freedom. This is about treatment of people, and in Idaho, we treat people well. We're respectful of each other. We're respectful of our neighbors. We care about our community. That's the Idaho way. And if you can't be that way, don't come here.
Did you ever have a thought that, you know, you see all these people resigning for this, you know, about the same reasons as yours, and you ever thought, I'm not going to resign, I'm just going to push through and it's going to be hard? Did you ever have that thought process and then finally get to the point of, okay, I understand, it's not worth it anymore?
I always said I had two non-negotiables. You know, threats made against my kids and threats to my livelihood for a volunteer position. And I just didn't see these guys stopping on my employer. And that was finally the draw. So I do hope Idaho will take seriously that this kind of threat's not something that we should allow or tolerate, and that we need to change the laws in order to stop employers from being harassed for nothing. I mean, they're not even involved at all.
Johnson began serving in January of 2020, right before COVID hit. Now she walks away in a much different world in February of 2022. But Johnson says she's not done working in education.
I'm not stepping away forever. I'm not even stepping away from West Ada. I already was talking to him today. But to step away, find out how to really work with the legislature and some other folks and stop what's happening to not just me, but other school board members, other local leaders, other legislators, even staff. I had some emails from staff of prominent congressmen who said they feared for their lives at times when they worked for their staff. And that kind of harassment's just not Idaho. It's not who we are. And we got to stop. And so I figured I'm going to want to change my transition to that, knowing that the school board and Dr. Bub had things really under control here.
It's not Idaho, and frankly, it is cowardly to go after a school board member and her family. And it has run rampant across the country. And again, it has happened uncontrollably here in Idaho, which is a shame. And she mentioned legislation, Joe. What are we talking about here?
Well, you may remember last year, Representative Greg Cheney of Canyon County, he had brought an idea to the State House after there was protests and threats at his home in Caldwell. And at that point, Representative Cheney and other lawmakers talked about making it a crime or making it some kind of violation to go to a public official's house, get on their property and, you know, threaten them.
Right.
This type of situation, as we highlighted, this is not just a one-time situation in the West Ada School District. Here in the Treasure Valley and the state of Idaho, we've seen this over the last 2 years. And people like Amy are now saying we need to do something about this. So I have a good feeling that Amy's going to be working with people down at the State House to probably talk about legislation to protect public officials and public servants. Because one thing I talked about this afternoon with her and other people in our community is at some point you will push everybody out of wanting to volunteer and be on these school boards. And it makes you wonder, if you push out all the good people, who's left?
Who is left? I have to ask this because it's been brought up by several people in our community. How much of this, when it comes to school boards and the stress that they're under, can be laid at the feet of Governor Brad Little? Because from the very beginning, he said these decisions are going to be made at the local level. And instead of making any sort of state mandate, which we have yet to see, which some people are very much in favor of, handling it on a local level, case by case, how much of that, though, could fall on his responsibility?
Well, if you talk to people privately across the state, they say that they feel like the governor put them in a tough situation because they are fully honest. School districts were not equipped to deal with the health crisis and also run public relations with parents that were threatening teachers and school board members. So there is frustration with the governor's office, but at the same time, what does the governor do about this? He's asked people to treat teachers responsibly. He's invested in education. It's a tough situation, and I know there's frustration across the board, but people like Amy Johnson are now trying to get involved to make a change. We'll see what that change looks like.
All right, maybe it could happen. Maybe not this session, but a future session. It possibly could come up. All right, thank you very much, Joe.